without looking at the message guide, how many of you know what a poser is? You know what a poser, yeah. A poser is a great word, isn't it? It did not enter into my vocabulary until, I would say, the last decade. When we never talked about posers when we were kids. That wasn't a part of anything. But when our children became young adults, they started using that word. Maybe even in high school they were using it. And I remember the first time that I heard somebody use the word poser, I knew exactly what it meant. There's actually a kind of a playfulness about it as well. You can't use it too seriously. You're not taking a poser very seriously. I mean, you don't. That goes with the territory. A poser is a big talker who is pretending to be something that he isn't. A poser is a big talker who is pretending to be something that he isn't. And they are, as Texans say, all hat, no horse. And their motto to life is, fake it until you make it. And as I was working on the authorized Boydston paraphrase of 2 John 7 through 13 this week, poser seemed to be the perfect word to describe the false and the deceptive teachers that John was warning some of the churches about. Listen, here's the passage again in the paraphrase. There are a lot of fake teachers out there right now. They don't acknowledge that when Jesus Christ came into the world, he was a full human being. These smooth talkers say that Jesus was merely a spirit who made himself appear to be human. Such teachers are posers, and dare I say, the Antichrist. So, be on guard. You don't want to slip backward and lose all the progress you've made. Stay the course with the real Jesus so that you receive all the benefits you're entitled to through your association with him. If anyone goes off the deep end, they are rejecting the safety of Christ, perhaps without even realizing that they are in over their heads until it's too late. Such people have rejected the teaching of Christ and have thus distanced themselves from God. However, those who stay the course, following the teaching of Christ, are connected both with him and God the Father. That is, whoever continues on with Christ as originally taught, continues in relationship with God, both the Father and the Son. Don't host or otherwise empower the fakesters, those who deny the true teaching of Christ. Investing in people like that makes you an accomplice in their crimes. There's a lot more that I'd like to say, but I prefer to talk face to face. Sometimes it's wise to refrain from putting certain things in writing. Besides, it can all wait until we're sitting together and talking over coffee. What a joyous occasion that would be. The chosen children in your sister congregation send you their love. So, here is the key point this morning. To stay connected to God. Let's see if I can find my device here. And not finding it. The problem with having everything black. To stay connected to God, give posers the cold shoulder while staying the course with the real Jesus. To stay connected to God, give posers the cold shoulder while staying the course with the real Jesus. And in our passage, John explains how all of this kind of fits together. And it's not really complicated, actually, but it is a bit on the weighty side. So the first thing that I want to note is that there are posers out there trying to influence us away from Christ. That's number one on the message guide. There are posers out there trying to influence us away from Christ. Now, of course, most posers would not describe themselves as such. They wouldn't say it that way. Rather, they would tell you that they are the ones who are influencing people toward Christ. So what motivates the rise of these posers, these fakesters, deceptive teachers? Aren't they just trying to get their version of the truth out there? Maybe. But it's more complicated than that. Whenever I hear or read something in the news or on the internet, I always try to ask myself, and maybe this comes with my journalism training, but is there someone who is gaining by sharing this story? Is there someone who is gaining by sharing this story? For example, a government researcher contacts you with the information that your house is sitting on a newly discovered earthquake fault. It's not a big one, but it is significant enough that an earthquake could break the petroleum gas line that runs next to your back wall. And the researcher just noticed that this was the case, and he thought you ought to know. In a panic, you call the gas line company, which reassures you that there is nothing, absolutely nothing to worry about. They say that they did a study before they put that gas line in 20 years ago, and they are 110% certain that nothing could ever possibly ever happen with that gas line. The government's research is faulty, they say, and they are going to contact the agency to make sure that the researcher stops harassing you with silly speculation. Based on that cursory assessment, without even examining any of the reports yourself, which story is most likely rooted in some kind of deception? Whose story is going to benefit the storyteller? What do you think?
The company. The gas company.
The gas company? Are you tracking with? Did you understand what I mean by that? That somebody is benefiting from the story that they tell, or their version of the story they tell. So the Church of Jesus Christ has been chugging along for about 50 years, and they've been making significant progress. Nobody's getting rich, but some of the apostles have become quite influential, but not in the sense that they could really turn that influence into personal gain, especially considering the nature of their message has to do with, and the nature of their influence has to do with sacrifice and living these kind of counter-cultural lives that they keep talking about. Then along comes a few guys who are suddenly teaching that the apostles have the whole Jesus thing wrong. And that we don't really have to live sacrificial lives or even moral lives. They've come up with a new way of doing Jesus, the Jesus thing, that is modeled on a new understanding of Jesus. So based on a cursory assessment, not even taking into account the details of each of the stories, which party is most likely to be full of posers? We need to start asking these kinds of questions, or we're going to get swept up in the energy of the poser movements. Even today there are posers vying for the allegiance of lazy people enthralled with presentations and the drama of the show without even digging into the details of the stories or considering what each subject involved might possibly be gaining by telling the story. Might someone benefit by pitching you a story or a new way or even an old way of doing things? How well tuned and calibrated is your poser detector? John was wanting to make sure that his readers back then and even now, are well equipped to deal with these fakesters, these posers, these deceivers. That there is no end to the number of hucksters who want to benefit from our gullibility. And if Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, his followers are going to need to be keen about maintaining truth and not getting sucked in by the people who are putting on an engaging show or who are putting out the most energy or expressing themselves with the most passion. Don't take the easy route. Be alert for posers. They could ruin your life. So verses 7 to 8 again, such teachers are posers, and dare I say, the Antichrist. So be on guard. You don't want to slip backward and lose all the progress you've made. Stay the course with the real Jesus so that you receive all the benefits you're entitled to through your association with him. Secondly, I want you to again see that theology matters. Theology matters. No, you are not saved by having a solid theological understanding of God and what he is doing through Christ. You are saved by trusting or putting your faith in Christ, right? Mm-hmm. But it's still very possible that a faulty theology could ultimately undermine your faith. That is, if you live with bad theology long enough, you could easily stop trusting God. You could easily stop trusting in what Christ has done, redirecting your faith to something or someone else, a faulty version of Christ that has little in common with the real Christ. And that's John's concern here in 2 John. There was this breakoff movement that was starting to emerge in the church, and a group of people who were more influenced by Greek thinking than biblical thinking. They were called docetics. And the word docetic comes from the Greek word docetai, which means illusionist. Illusionist. And they taught that Jesus was an illusionist. That Jesus, the Son of God, was actually a spirit from God who only appeared human. That was the illusion. His body was a grand illusion. When he walked, his feet never really touched the ground. It just looked like his feet were touching the ground because he was actually really just a spirit. For as perhaps you know, in mainstream Greek thinking, anything that is material, that's flesh, blood, that's substantive, it is tainted. It's evil in nature. And anything that is spirit is good, right? And never shall the twain meet, never shall the spirit and the material come together. Because by definition, it's an impossibility for the divine to have anything to do with the material, even to the point of touching it. So this God-man assertion in the Gospels was very, very disturbing to some of the Greek thinkers. And thus the responsive emphasis, for example, in John 1:14, which you all know, just to make sure that the Greek-leaning people truly understood who Jesus was. So the Word, and from the context here, we know that the Word is God. So the Word became human and made his home among us. He was full of unfailing love and faithfulness, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the Father's one and only Son. And the early church fathers believed that full salvation for humanity and creation depended on whether Jesus was actually fully human. After much Bible study and discussion, the consensus was that Jesus was God in the flesh, as John had said. That he was mysteriously fully God, and at the same time he was fully human. Imagine, that's scandalous to a Greek thinker, but that's what they saw the biblical record to mean. Now today people might squirm at the idea that Jesus was divine. We're scientific people, we're modern people, we kind of come at things with this presupposition of skepticism. But back then, they squirmed at the idea that Jesus was truly human. That was a scandal. You see, the church argued if Jesus were not human, if he were not a person fully engaged in the human experience, then how could he have really, truly died as the sacrifice that broke the back of death and freed us from a death-defined existence? It all hinges on Jesus being fully human. So John says in verse 7, there are a lot of fake teachers out there right now. They don't acknowledge that when Jesus Christ came into the world, he was a full human being. These smooth talkers say that Jesus was merely a spirit who made himself appear to be human. Then verse 8, stay the course with the real Jesus so that you receive all the benefits you're entitled to through your association with him. So it's through the real Jesus, it's through the material Jesus, the fully human Jesus, that salvation comes and the benefits of salvation come. That is, when you are connected to Christ, you are connected to God. For he is the bridge from God to us so that we can cross over and be united in fellowship with God. So verse 9, if anyone goes off the deep end and they are rejecting the safety of Christ, perhaps without even realizing that they are in over their heads until it's way too late, such people have rejected the teaching of Christ and have thus distanced themselves from God. However, those who stay the course, following the teaching of Christ, are connected both with him and God the Father. That is, whoever continues on with Christ, as originally taught, continues in relationship with God, both the Father and the Son. So the only way to have a lasting relationship with God is through the God-man. Stay close to him and you'll be close to God, the Father, the Son, and yes, even though John does not mention him in this passage, the Holy Spirit. Trust in this real flesh and blood Jesus, not a watered-down illusion, a poser that can't do you any eternal good. What you believe about Jesus matters to how you have faith. Theology matters. So thirdly then, resist posers with a cold shoulder. Resist posers with a cold shoulder. In the ancient world, there were no Holiday Inns, and Motel 6 did not exist. So when a poser, a missionary poser, would come to town to spread his message, the first thing that he had to do was to convince someone in that town from the church to host him. Which was usually not such a hard thing to do because the church had fostered this amazing culture of hospitality. And then from that base of operation, once he got into somebody's house, he could have people come and listen to him lecture and talk. And from that base of operation, he could start spreading his stories. So John says, don't even think about supporting these bozos in this way. That's a literal translation. Don't host, verse 10, don't host or empower the fakesters, those who deny the true teaching of Christ. Investing in people like that makes you an accomplice in their crimes. Now, this is not saying that you should never let someone from an off-center sect through your door, although that might actually be good policy. And it's not saying that you should never talk with people like that. There are times when you may want to engage people in dialogue to better understand what they really think, or so that you can better respond to them with honest answers rather than responding to these kind of secondhand, often inaccurate bits of information that you piece together from all of these secondhand sources. I was involved in the evangelical LDS dialogue for several days at Fuller Seminary, and I got to know and meet several of the great Mormon thinkers of our time. And after listening to what they had to say over breakfast, I think I better understand where we differ. And they better understand what we're saying. I might even say that I see signs after taking all of this in, and still thinking about it, processing it over years. I'm seeing signs that the whole LDS movement is very slowly inching toward a more historically orthodox form of Christianity. They're moving center. But I see that because I've had these very direct discussions rather than just taking some very reactionary books at face value. In the 1960s and 70s, there was a radio evangelist who'd actually gone on the air, I think, in the 40s. But by the 60s and 70s, he had a very large following. His name was Herbert Armstrong. And he formed this huge radio audience that he had put together into a church called the Worldwide Church of God. And they had a lot of really wild ideas about the end times, and they were very legalistic, and they were more Old Testament oriented than they were gospel oriented, and they were very anti-Trinitarian. And nobody in kind of the mainstream evangelical movement would have anything to do with them until about 1986. Armstrong died at that point. And his church, which had just been following him as a personality, started to struggle to articulate what they actually really believed without his presence. And in the 1990s, a few of their ministers wandered over to the Fuller Seminary campus. They had, their operation was in Pasadena, California, and Fuller's in Pasadena as well. And they enrolled in a couple theology classes. The same thing happened at Azusa Pacific University. They have a graduate seminary there as well. And many seminaries would have never let these guys in because they're worried that they were there to lead other people astray, other students astray. But these schools, while keeping, I'm sure, a safe eye for potential trouble, saw this as an opportunity to influence the worldwide Church of God movement. And within a few years, these students that had finished these classes had quietly swung this whole denomination back toward kind of mainstream Christianity. Now, I don't think you will read any of that in the history books. But from talking with some of the people who were involved, that is the story that I'm told. And my point is that we have to discern opportunities and not just write everyone off. John, however, in seeing the aggressive nature of the docetic missionaries, said that the best thing that you can do with these guys is give them the cold shoulder. Otherwise, you're going to be providing them material support. You'll be abetting them in their crime of undermining the real Jesus. With trolls like that, you can't even have a discussion or a healthy argument with them. You were just enabling them. And the point is that we need to tune into what's happening with people. If their agenda is to undermine the gospel and mess people up, don't even waste your time arguing with these guys. And certainly don't waste your time contributing to their cause in any way. Don't write them a check. Don't host them in your house, or don't host meetings with them. 15 years ago, I would engage with anyone who crossed my path on the internet. But I soon realized that even though I was engaging with them, they were not engaging with me. They were simply using my thinking to launch irrational diatribes against everything that crossed their minds. So I started giving people the cold shoulder, ignoring people and ideas that didn't really need responses. Now, I'm a lot more selective. I don't want to empower blowhards with a response, whether it's on Facebook, at my door, or in the parking lot at the grocery store. This very morning, I was checking Facebook, and one of the guys that is a friend who was actually one of my campers at Mission Springs, he's younger, and he said some really silly, ridiculous things that I said, I am not going to get sucked into this conversation. He was totally irrational. Didn't make any sense. He was talking about the women that were marching yesterday, and I said, I'm not going there. I mean, I could give him 30 facts that would show he doesn't know what he's talking about, but he wouldn't listen to those. He would just jump all over and use it to spew all kinds of nonsense. The cold shoulder is a powerful statement in those kinds of situations. We are not going to engage every single wacko idea. We are not going to give posers a platform in our minds or our communities. Think about it. Jesus did not engage everyone who confronted him. And when he did engage people confronting him, he often did so in creative and indirect ways that revealed who he was in relation to the situation. I can actually win the argument with a bunch of posers just by ignoring them and focusing on the real Jesus. They may not realize at the moment that they've been defeated. Even the devil seems unaware of his defeat at the cross. But if you look at things from this kind of grander perspective, if you're in it for the long haul, you'll realize that staying the course with the real Jesus ultimately takes the wind out of their sails. And that is the good news. So, who would like to add a thought, share a story of how they see God at work in their lives, or discuss something in the text? While I rehydrate my throat.
I think sometimes, it's not sometimes, most of the time, and we're looking for the people, the Christian leader or the Christians, by their action. This is mine. I'm looking for their action. I don't really focus on their speaking. Because now a lot of people, they use the Bible to get their own benefit. So in this way, I don't follow the people say, oh, this, and I don't reject them, but I don't really listen to them. Because in my understanding, God works with us is individually. If the important is we have to receive God's Spirit with us every day. It's not about the people, the Christian leader, how they say, how they persuade you to what you have to do and how to do it. It's how about God talk to us individually to what we have to do and how to do it. This is very important.
I think one of the things that you're adding to the conversation that is really good is that we have to see the people's actions.
Yes, the action.
Not just what they say, but how they live and act.
Yes.
And say, is this...
How they treat the people, how they help the people, how they fix the problem, how they to deal with the issue is the big point. It's not about how they talk very nicely, how they post it in the Facebook, in the anywhere, what they say it. Because this is not the
is there a genuine kindness about that?
Yes. So this one, I think we have to get involved with the relationship to determine, to see what they do and then how we follow them.
Okay. Yeah, right? You have to know the people.
Yes, we have to know the people. It's not just, we go to the church, we go to the website, we go to see their Facebook, how they say it, then we follow them. And I don't think it's this way.
So which of the posers today do you think are the most dangerous to evangelical Christianity? Or any of them winning souls away from Christianity? I mean, some of them are, I know.
Yeah. I would say that the posers that we struggle most with now are internal. It's not some outside cult, outside sect coming in, but that we've got a lot of internal issues of, I think it's talking about behavior, but credibility issues, and people saying and aligning themselves in weird ways with power and control. People that are seeking to accumulate power for themselves. Those are the people that I'm most concerned about. The people that are trying to become big and influential, trying to acquire power.
I never would have thought of that.
It's not that the external things aren't an issue still, but those, I would see those as being the major poser problem.
I still remember you say the one word. The power, the people, what the power we have, the stronger power they have, maybe the more dangerous it becomes. Because people, when you have the power, then you have a lot of people follow you at that time, you become proud. You become, because you influence so, right? And so in this way, you can allow the opportunity to do the evil things. So in this way, I prefer to low power. I just do it exactly what I have to do. It's better. The people follow you sometimes because a lot of people, they really like to hear the lies things, lies talk. It's not about criticism. More the lies you talk, more the influence you get in this time, in this area. So I don't think this is the good way. Maybe, but not exactly the good way. So we have to get to the basic, go to the people, go to the group.